Hi everyone, today I'll be talking you through this adorable fluffy cat. This is the first of 5 of these videos, and in each one I'm going to focus on a specific section of the cat, and today this will be those gorgeous blue eyes. A full materials list is in the description below so you can see exactly which pencils, paper and other tools I'll be using, but don't worry if you don't have everything on the list, similar colours will be just fine. So sit back, grab a cuppa and your coloured pencils and let's get drawing. So when it comes to eyes, I always find using Polychromos is a really good pencil for eyes. They tend to be a little bit more translucent than the softer, more opaque pencils, and that means that you can really get that gorgeous light shining through the eyes, which is exactly what you want. I always start by adding an outline around the eye, and then I use the Polychromos Dark Indigo just to plot the pupil area. I then go in with, this pencil is the Polychromos Sky Blue, so then I plot the first layer. I'm very careful to try and keep those highlight areas free of colour so that they really stand out once we've got all of the layers in. A really useful little tip actually for creating some lovely bright highlights is using Scotch magic tape and something sharp like this embossing tool, and I can just go in over the top of the pigment that I've already put in and just gently pull out any of the pigment so I can create these finer highlights. It's a little bit tricky to see the highlights at this stage because we've only got one layer of pencil in there, but as we start to build the layers and the colours, we'll start to really see those highlights stand out. So you can start to add some of the darker pigment into the eye and really start to pull out some of those colours. I've used a range of different blues in this, and all of the blues that I've used are in the description below. You'll also see me using my putty eraser quite a lot, and some of you are probably thinking it's a bit annoying seeing my big fat hand there in the video, but actually it's a really great tool, and I use it an awful lot just to keep my highlights just that little bit cleaner, and it gives me a really soft edge. So it's not like a normal eraser that will give you sort of like a hard edge if you rub something out. The kneadable eraser, and I use the Faber Castell one, is just brilliant for just dabbing in, just taking a little tiny bit of soft colour out, and I use it more as a tool for adding in highlights rather than erasing. So coloured pencil drawings are all about the layering, and it can be a little bit slow, but it's so fantastic to see your colours just sort of come to life and the parts of the animal that you're drawing come to life. And what I'm doing on this eye is layering, so we're starting very gently, very gentle pressure. We're working slowly through the eye, adding the colour in, taking some of those pigments out again like you were seeing me doing with the kneadable eraser, and just building it gradually. What we're wanting at the end is an eye that looks realistic, glassy and smooth, and you know, you can get that by just going a little bit slower and layering gently. You'll see me using the white museum aquarelle quite a bit, and I'm using that to very gently burnish. I never use really hard pressure with my pencils, it tends to be very soft pressure, but the white museum aquarelle, the Caran d'Ache pencil, is a really fabulous pencil for just softly burnishing, blending the colours out, making everything a tiny little bit smoother. So I'm using that every now and again just to sort of smooth everything so we keep getting that nice glassy feel to the eyes. The other thing that's vital with your drawing are the values, the tonal values, so the shadows, the lights, the midtones. Particularly with eyes, we tend to forget that actually there's quite a lot of shadowing going on, and to make these eyes really realistic, I keep on coming back and darkening the shadow up on the top of the eye and kind of down to the bottom and right, and it's really important, and it's something that I talk to my students about all of the time. Make your darks dark, you know, and that is what's going to make your pieces stand out. If you get your shadows really dark, you know, well, as dark as they need to be, then it's going to really stand out and they're going to look very realistic. So you can see the eye really starting to come to life now. All of this gentle layering, just adding colour in, making sure that we're keeping those lovely highlights clean, and just building the vibrancy really of the eye. The shadows, again, really taking centre stage, making sure that they're really nice and dark, and bringing that white museum aquarelle in just to sort of gently smooth everything. Again, using the tape just to sort of bring out some of those brighter highlights. And then you can use some of your lighter pencils. I tend to use like the Cold Grey 1, Cold Grey 2 to kind of do a little bit more burnishing, where you can add a little bit of pigment in as well, as opposed to just using the white all of the time. And the black plays a really big part. You can get some gorgeous dark shadows. Don't be frightened about using black. It's a really good pencil to use for dark colours. You can add it underneath the blues, you can add it underneath reds, etc., and create some really good strong shadows. If you're relatively gentle with your pressure, you can build your layers up and you can get a huge amount of layers. Even on the smoothest of papers, you can still get a lot of layers. You'll notice with my drawing here that I'm not using super sharp pencils. I don't tend to use really sharp pencils unless I'm working on very smooth paper or hot press paper. With the Pastelmat that I'm using for this piece, my pencils tend to be just that little bit blunter. I don't keep sharpening them, and it just gives me sort of like a nicer feel, really. So this is another tool that I use an awful lot of the time. It's the Slice manual pen cutter. Unfortunately, this part of the video you can't actually see what I'm doing, but I'm using it very gently just to scrape away little parts of the pigment, just again to clean those highlights up. So it's another tool that you can use in conjunction with the Scotch Magic tape and your erasers. I tend to hold it on one side and just sort of use the edge of the blade just to gently scrape away that pigment, and it does work very nicely. So at this point the middle of the eye is done, and I just start to bring in a little bit of the pigment around the edge of the eye so that it looks a bit more in context. You know, a floating eyeball I think doesn't always look particularly attractive. So I'm just bringing in some greys. One of my favourite pencils here, the Granite Rose Pablo. Fantastic pencil for all sorts of different reasons. It smooths, it adds lovely colour, it works really well with all sorts of different colours, and it just adding that little bit of interest around the eye there just makes it look a little bit more attractive, and kind of spurs you on, really, you know, rather than just have a floating eyeball. So we move on to the second eye, and we do exactly the same as we did with the first. We just gently start to build those layers up using the dark blues, the blacks, and all of the different blues in between, burnishing, keeping those highlights really nice and clean. The pressure I'm using throughout this is really light. If you want to check whether your pressure is light enough, you can create like a pressure bar or something like that, where you start with the lightest pressure you possibly can use to get pigment onto the paper. That is the lightest you need to be going. That's the pressure you need to be using. If you want to test it out, just run your pencil over the back of your hand and try not to indent your skin. Or you can imagine drawing on the top of a really ripe tomato, something like that, where you know you're not indenting the skin at all, you're not breaking the skin. That's the pressure that you want when you first start your pencil drawings. And then as you progress through and you layer up a little bit more, you can start to increase the pressure a little bit more, so that you know, the more layers of pencil you get on the paper, the more you fill all of the tooth of the paper in, and the more then that you increase the pressure a little bit, it squashes everything into the tooth and you get a smoother look. So it is important to increase your pressure, but when you first start your drawings, using lovely light pressure is vital. And the other really good reason for using lovely light pressure when you start is if you go wrong, it's much easier to rub it out. I think one of the biggest challenges for me is actually going dark enough, and I have talked about the importance of your values and making sure your darks are dark. I find it particularly difficult to do that, and I know a lot of other people do find it difficult as well. It's almost like it's a blockage we have, and it's, you know, if you go too dark, maybe it's because we think we're not going to be able to rub it out, or it's going to look awful, or it's going to look too harsh. Actually, you know, making sure that things are dark enough is really important. And I find one of the strategies that's really helped me is to go into the shadows gradually. So gradually build the shadows up. You might kind of do a little bit of the shadow and then come back and do something else. A little bit like I've just done there, where I've gone and sort of worked a little bit on the edge of the cat's other eye and then come back in again. Bit more shadow, work on something else, bit more shadow, work on something else. And I find building it gradually like that, I find it much easier to actually build the darkness and the shadows, and I get that lovely, lovely, you know, contrast in the tones, which is exactly what you need. So don't feel you have to go straight in, you know, with some really, really dark darks, because it's scary. It really is scary, you know. So go gradually, just build it really, really gently, you know, and then you'll end up with something that looks beautifully realistic, gorgeous values. It's going to really pop off the page and just look fantastic. So a few last key points for drawing eyes. Go gently, really lovely light pressure. Use whites and light greys to help to burnish and smooth your colours and your layers. Use your erasers, particularly in the kneadable eraser, to bring out those lovely highlights and light areas. Use your Scotch tape to kind of get some really, really specific highlights in there. You can use your slice tool as well. Always check that it's going to work with your paper. And get those darks in, but go gradually. You don't have to do it right from the beginning. Hi everyone, thanks for watching this video, and I really hope you found it useful and have learnt something new. If you have any questions or queries, please feel free to leave me a comment and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. If you want to see more videos like this, hit the subscribe button below, and if you'd like to find more tutorials filmed in real time with loads of detail and full step-by-step instructions, you can join my Patreon for just £5 a month. You can find a link for this in the description below. Hope to see you again soon.